All right, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Bullpen Blues. As always, I'm your co-host Kevin Dixon, joined by our good buddy David Esser. David, eh, how we doing, man?
Yeah, I mean, no words for where this baseball team is at. It felt like yesterday where we were getting excited about Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, Corey Knebel, all these new faces, all these
It was our
guys that
last
we,
episode.
yeah, all these guys that we were hoping would come in and kind of change things, and here we are sitting 4 games below 500. The Mets aren't even in the picture at the moment. They're cruising up at first
Yep.
place, having a grand old time, and it's just more of the same, and it's frustrating. I saw the word embarrassing tossed around quite a bit this weekend with how they just came out so lifeless. I mean, of course, they blow the 7-run lead against the Mets a couple days ago. We're going to get into singling out a couple names here on this episode, but I think overall, just the entire state of the club, Kevin, it's just bad.
Well, we're just going to get into it, David. I mean, they have no identity. Like they just don't. If you've noticed, like when they pitch, man, they don't hit. When they hit, they don't pitch. There's no consistency. There's no fire. Like we joke on this show, David, a lot, and like a running theme we do is like, oh, but he's a good person, like, because that seems to be the narrative a lot of people tend to go to. Um, at what point is that like a downfall for the team? Because they have no personality. They have no personality, David. Like nothing at all. It's the same mopey, hanging your head, walking around. It's the same mistakes we've been making for the last 5 years. This is David, I think you could argue that this is worse than the 2014, 2015, 2016 because there's expectations attached to this team. Those years you just knew that team wasn't good, it's whatever. They're going to come to the ballpark every day. They're probably going to lose 7 out of 10 games. It is what it is. This team, the last couple of years we've had some expectation. We thought they were going to, thought they're going to win the division, have a chance to win the World Series. They can't get out of their own way, David. And it's the same things. Like they're not learning from their mistakes. They're making the same mistakes over and over. They have absolutely no identity. And this is coming from someone who, a lot of times on this show, I preach that it's early. There's a lot of time to figure it out. And at the same time, it is early, David. They could get this figured out. However, if everything I've seen over the last couple of years would signal to me, what's probably going to happen, David, is they're going to make a little push. They'll get back to 500 and they'll drop 4 or 5 again. Then they'll make a little push. They might get 2 or 3 games over 500, and then they'll drop 7 out of 10. That's just kind of where this team has been, man. They can't get too high, and they can't get too low. They just hang out in mediocrity. This has been an incredibly mediocrity filled era of Phillies baseball over the last 5+ years, and it's just at some point you just become numb to it. It's just exhausting.
Yeah, and I think a mopey is probably the best way to describe the team because it's every game, every time they blow a lead, every time somebody strikes out with the bases loaded or grounds into a deadly double play. It's a bunch of hanging your heads. It's a bunch of kind of pouting. It's a bunch of slow walking back to the dugout. Like, what are we doing? Like, genuinely, what is the plan? Because there is good players on this baseball team. Like we got MVPs, we got all stars, we got silver sluggers. Like we have some legitimately good baseball players. We got top prospects who are finally, breaking onto the scene. I mean, Alec Bohm has been one of the few bright spots of this organization. You got veterans who've been there and done that. Like there are good players on this baseball team. And it seems like we slapped them all together and everybody's just pouting around, kind of depressed a little bit, just being sad and feeling sorry for themselves. And it's just hard to watch because you're right. You go back to 2015, 2014, these teams stunk, but I did feel like they were playing with some life. I mean, Michael Franco was always bat flipping, always getting excited. Look, he's bad at baseball. Don't want Michael Franco back. But I did like his energy, right? Like even someone as gross as a Jake Arrieta, sometimes he'd get fired up and yell at people, and I was okay with that. I actually
Yeah.
appreciated that. I mean, for what it's worth, the Jake Arrieta era of Phillies baseball was just as productive as this current era. They're going to win about the same amount of games. They're going to finish around 500 at this current rate. So it's this lack of identity, this lack of passion, which I do think starts with the manager. And I've defended Joe in the past when I'm about damn tired of his lack of fire in the dugout, especially considering he's won a World Series. He knows what it takes, and I feel like he just doesn't care anymore. He's like, I've won my World Series. I'm cashing my checks.
He's clueless. I've been saying it for a year and a half now.
But I also think he's probably frustrated with some of his players' lack of kind of fire and passion. I mean, some of the homegrown guys, your Rhys Hoskins, your Aaron Nolas, they're quiet. They don't want to talk. Bryce Harper's never been much of a yeller. JT Realmuto, I've heard this dude talk like 3 times his entire Phillies career. You were hoping for something from Schwarber and Castellanos. They seem to kind of be settling into that quiet mentor role. And like, we do need a couple guys to really just start screaming, start yelling, get ejected, start a fight. Like, I don't care. Give me something to prove that there's a pulse with this baseball team.
Nice guys finish last, David. That seems to be the trend with the Phillies team, is it not? And you're right. Girardi is probably frustrated with what this team has been able to do so far. But you know what, David? He's the face of the team in the sense of, like, obviously he's not the face of the franchise, but he's their leader. He's literally the manager of the ball club. You're their head coach. I know it's not called that in baseball, but like, he is their leader. He might be frustrated, but it's kind of on him to push the right buttons to get this thing back on track. And for those people who don't want to be critical of him because he won a World Series, 12 years ago, 13 years ago at this point, with a Hall of Fame infield where all 4 players in his infield are Hall of Fame caliber players. And he had CC Sabathia at his peak. He had the greatest closer of all time. I mean, like, you can go on and on. Like, that Yankees team was absolutely stacked. And we saw it firsthand because they beat the Phillies. I don't care what he did 13 years ago, David. I'm tired of people hanging their hat on that. Well, he did this, he did that. A long time ago. It was a different era of baseball. The game has changed. I don't know if Girardi has changed enough to be able to fluctuate in today's game, because you know what, David? These rosters have talent on them. And for the people who want to continue to defend them, they haven't done shit in his time here. Excuse my language. The most games they've won is 82 games. They're 4 games under 500 in Joe Girardi's stint in Philadelphia. That about sums it up for you. I shouldn't have to go into any further of why it's been disappointing, because at the end of the day, he was supposed to be the guy that was going to help lift us up. We let go of Gabe Kapler for that reason, who all he's done is go out to San Francisco. He had 107 wins last year. That team continues to play with fire. I love the energy that he's had out in San Fran, where they're stealing bases up 6-7 runs, they're hitting and running with big leads in games, and they're getting pushed back from the league. And their mentality is just, we're going to keep scoring. If a team wants us not to bunt, they should defend the bunt. I think the Phillies could use that type of energy right now. And unfortunately, they had it in-house and it's not here anymore. But that's not the point of this rant. It's more so that this team just continues to trip over itself. They take 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And this isn't a new thing, David. This has been going on for a long time.
Yeah, and I think the most frustrating part with Joe is he was retired. Like, he was sitting at home, probably somewhere in Florida, a nice sunny beach, and he came out of retirement to coach this team, to manage this baseball team. Obviously, the check that Middleton cashed to get him was probably a big reason why. But like, it's his legacy on the line. Like, the Phillies weren't good before. They're probably not going to be very good after Joe, and unless they really switch things up. Like, this was an opportunity for Girardi to establish himself as one of the best managers in baseball history. You win in New York and Philadelphia. I don't know if anyone has ever done that. Like, this was all on him. And he came in and he just kind of seems like, just mopey, relaxed, like, whatever. Like, why are you here then? Like, go retire again. What's the point of you being here?
That's the old classic.
Yeah, he's just sitting there.
Arms crossed.
I mean, granted, like I said, I don't think it's all on Joe. But I do think his kind of just relaxed nature to everything is a big reason they're in the position they're in. And I think, kind of segueing into our next point, some of the players within this organization, and I want to kind of word this very clearly, who have been around for a while, and some of them are good baseball players. But when you underperform in 2017 and underperform in 2018 and 2019 and 2020 and 2021 and now 2022, and Kevin, it's the same players that fans are defending year after year after year. No, they're not the problem. They're part of the solution. They're
so too nice of a guy, man.
They're too nice of a guy. Oh, we drafted him, right?
Critical of him.
Their family's super cute on Instagram or whatever. Like when it's the same guys every single year that you're ruthlessly defending, and yet the team does not win, you got to start to put two and two together. And I think people who've listened to the show for a while probably know the direction we're going. We're talking about Rhys Hoskins, and I think it's important to state that Rhys is not the reason the Phillies are bad. Right? He's
Yeah,
not the reason they're 4 games
he's
below
not.
500.
He's just kind of been here the whole mediocre era that we've just been discussed. He's been the face of it, David.
He's not the problem, but he's
Now,
not part of the solution. And I think there's other players on this organization who aren't part of the solution. I mean, you look at a Gene Segura type character, he's never won anything. You look at a Didi Gregorius type character, he won way back when with the Yanks. Like he's not that guy anymore. You talk about maybe an Odubel Herrera, like he's probably a bench bat. You don't want him as your starting center fielder. Maybe dip into the rotation. Like Eflin, like are his knees healthy? When he's healthy, he's great. When he's not very usable. Kyle Gibson, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, he's been very good. But like, are you hinging your playoff hopes on a Kyle Gibson who's never won anything in his career? I don't know. An Aaron Nola type character. Again, when he's on, when he's cooking, he's fantastic. When he's off, he's off. And there's too many guys like this in the organization. But I do think kind of the poster child for that is Rhys Hoskins, because every year fans want to tell us how great he is, how special he is. Oh, this is the year he breaks out. Every offseason, there's a new article.
yeah.
Oh, this is the year Rhys Hoskins breaks out. I'm like, brother,
MVP
he's almost
caliber
30.
year. Yeah.
It's every year.
Yeah.
So I'm certainly about done here in the defense for Rhys Hoskins, considering how just bad the Phillies have been with him as kind of the face of this new era.
Yeah, and we've kind of reached the point, for a lot of our listeners who are probably involved on Phillies Twitter, they see a lot of what goes on there. If you've noticed, the Rhys Hoskins defenders have really ramped up recently, and I think it's because a lot of people have started to swung the other way of this guy, and this way this team is constructed is just not it. David, I had people yesterday comparing him to Mike Trout, because Mike Trout's never won anything in Los Angeles. It's not even a conversation I'm willing to have with you, not you, just in general, because that's such an asinine statement, and it really makes me question your baseball IQ and how much you really follow the game. If that's, the argument you're going to lean on, well, Mike Trout's never won anything in Los Angeles. If Rhys Hoskins was doing what Mike Trout does on the baseball field, I would not be complaining one bit about him, would not be pointing the finger that, he's an issue with the roster. So to even like have that thought in your brain is just absolutely ridiculously asinine. Your opinion really diminishes in my mind, when you come out with a statement like that, because it's just, you can tell it's firing me up right now. It's so absolutely ridiculous. It makes you look like you have no clue what you're talking about. But as you mentioned, at the start of this little segment here, just because you're critical of a player doesn't mean you're pointing the finger at him that he's the reason. We're not saying Rhys Hoskins is the main reason for why this Phillies team is where it is. But at what point are we allowed to be critical of the guy without having to get the pushback of, oh, well, batting average doesn't matter in today's age? Okay, that's fine. He's hitting $180. $180. Batting average might not matter as much, David, but you cannot be hitting $180. What's his OPS?
638.
Yeah, 638. All right. So then there you go. Does OPS matter? Because you want to continue to say that these stats don't count. I understand, David, that he's probably a good person. I get that. His family seems cool. They're all on social. He seems like a likable guy. But at the end of the day, I really don't care anymore about that, David. Obviously, there is a line in the sand that gets drawn, but I want this team to win baseball games. I am tired of sticking my neck out for these guys who are clearly losers. I continue to see, well, over the last X amount of games, he's the number one first baseman in extra base hits. There's more to the game than extra base hits. And you nailed that with talking to me last night. There's way more that goes into it. Oh, and you know how far 162 game stretches for Rhys Hoskins? It goes back to the 2019 season, because that's another thing. He can't stay on the field. I'm just so over it, David. He honestly should have been gone 2 seasons ago, and we're still having the same conversation. I posed the question to you because I have it here on the screen if you're following along on YouTube. When are we allowed to be critical of Rhys Hoskins?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question.
Because I don't know when it is. I thought we were at this point at least 2 years ago, man.
Yeah, maybe when his batting average dips down to 100, we can start
Batting
talking
average
about
doesn't
it.
matter. I don't
Doesn't
wanna
matter.
hear it. It doesn't matter in today's game.
No, and I think it is ridiculous when you have a player who's been as bad at the plate as he's been this year. I mean, it's 95 at bats,
He
Kevin.
stinks, David. He
It's not
stinks.
like
I
this
don't
isn't.
care what he did last year. I
Yes.
don't care what he did in 2017. He stinks. He is not helping this team at all.
No, yeah. I mean, when someone's has an OPS below 700, we shouldn't have to justify our criticisms. That doesn't make any sense. If Nick Castellanos was batting 180, I would criticize him. When Schwarber was batting 180, we criticize him. Granted, we all had confidence he turned it around, which he has. He's been one of the best players this season from a pure OPS perspective. But when someone's laboring like this through 95 at bats, like that's not a small sample size. We're 20 games into the season, and it's 20 games down the drain because one of our quote unquote best players who's playing a premium position, first base, like around the league, that is one of the heaviest offense producing positions in the sport. Okay. And they're already kind of making a spot for him because we'd rather have Bohm there. We'd rather have Schwarber there. We might want JT there in the
Well,
future.
he's not. Look, we can be critical of him, and people can defend him. He is not a part of their future plans.
No,
They would not
absolutely
have
not.
handed
They're
Kyle
not going to
Schwarber
extend.
$20 million if he was in their future plans. Because you can argue that they've put up relatively similar numbers. Although I would take Kyle Schwarber over Rhys Hoskins. They're not going to pay both of those guys. So the writing's on the wall.
When they handed out two big money contracts to
Yeah.
two DHs, they're not keeping.
And you know what the sad thing is, David, is he's had every opportunity to secure his spot in this core in this organization. And unsurprisingly, if you've watched the Phillies the last couple of years, he hasn't solidified it. And how many times, David, do we have two guys on base, one out, maybe even two outs, Rhys Hoskins at the plate, and he strikes out or he pops up? There's no shortening up his swing. There's no change in approach. You nailed it before we came on the air. He does not change his swing, David, at all. He'll be down 0-2 in the count. He's still up there looking to homer. There's more to the game than that. It's just really exhausting, because everybody wants to defend him, and it's just kind of like I don't understand what he's done or helped the team accomplish. He hits a big home run when they're up 7-1. Like that's great. That's awesome. I know he has some power, but he is not a winning ball player. He's not a winning ball player. You know where he's going to end up, David? He's going to end up in like Kansas City, Washington. He's going to end up on a shitty team, just like Michael Franco, Cesar Hernandez, just like all those guys from that era of Phillies baseball who are probably starters in the league, but are going to end up on some team that finishes in 4th or 5th place every single season.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I think that's probably a good fit for Rhys. He goes to Cincinnati, he goes to Kansas City, he secures some money. He's a poor-ass guy. He'll get paid.
Yeah, be a good guy,
Yeah, settle down. Like I'm all for that, but that's not what we're trying to do in Philly.
I want
a funny tweet that Kevin that you sent me last night that I want to talk about real quick. I'm not gonna out the guy, but if you're on Philly's Twitter, you probably know who tweeted it. He was trying to make the argument that Rhys Hoskins is so good when he's hot that it's like having an extra Bryce Harper for 81 games and then having some terrible first baseman for the other 81 games.
Yeah, it's worth it though.
It's worth it, and I guess that's kind of the big question: is are his hot streaks good enough? Because he will get hot. It's coming. I don't know when it's coming. It could be in June, could be in July. He's going to go on a 3-week tear, and all the Rhys defenders are going to come crawling out of the woods and ready to tweet.
I told you.
Yeah, I told you, right? But the question is are his hot streaks good enough to justify his cold streaks? First of all, the answer is no for so many reasons. I think the first answer is his hot streaks are not Bryce Harper level. They never have been. They never will be. Okay, his career OPS is mid 800.
Bryce Harper's a 2-time MVP.
Bryce Harper's a 2-time MVP. whose OPS hangs around 1,000 most of the year. He goes cold for a little bit, and then he goes on a tear where his OPS is like 1,400.
You know why, dude? Because he'll smack a single. Like it's not boom or bust with Bryce Harper.
So First of all, statistically speaking, no. Rhys Hoskins' hot streaks are not Bryce Harper level. They're not Mike Trout
Yeah.
level. They're good. They're nothing great. His cold streaks are something else. They're bad. They're
Yeah.
unusable. He looks like a AAA player out there.
Legitimately unplayable.
He should be on the bench right now. He should be on the bench.
It's like having Andrew Knapp.
It really is. I mean, he's batting under the Mendoza line. Like, what are we doing here?
Having Andrew Knapp.
His on base percentage is under 300. He's not walking, which I thought he was spectacular at.
Yeah.
But I think kind of the second point to that is there is more to the game than hitting. And I know we got the whole ball go boom lineup, right? The beefy boys. We want to hit a bunch of home runs. I'm with that. It's a lot of fun. Here's the problem. When Bryce Harper's slumping, he's working his ass off on the base paths. He's given everything he can defensively to help his team win. Kevin, he's bunting. He's trying to bunt to first. He's stealing. He's doing all the little things right, knowing that when his swing comes back, he's ready to go. That's why he wins MVP. That's why his WAR is so high, right? I mean, you talk about a guy like JT, whose offensive numbers aren't always the prettiest. Most of the time, Rhys is hitting the ball better than JT. But JT's giving you defense. He's giving you base running. He's giving you all the little things right. He's busting his ass on infield, hits a little chopper to shortstop. JT's doing everything he can to beat that out.
David, it's why we're not being critical of Bryce Harper for the Phillies being a 500 team.
Exactly.
That's exactly it. It's
Yeah,
why we're not being critical of him.
You watch the game, like, oh, the whole eye test, like whatever. You can look at the defensive metrics. You can look at the base running WAR. Like these players are giving it their all.
What's his VORP though, man?
What's his? I mean, it feels like the Jokic and Embiid argument. It really does. It's like we're doing high level calculus to determine if a guy hitting 180 is a good player.
Yeah,
but that's the problem with Rhys. He can't defend. He can't run the bases. He can't bunt. He's not stealing. He's not really working counts and trying to draw a bunch of walks. Like he's just not really doing anything out there. If he was, it'd be a different conversation. Like Johan Camargo ain't nothing special, but he's going to give you good defense. He's going to hustle on the base paths. He's a switch hitter, which has its own benefits. Like the idea that Rhys just gets a pass for everything because he's going to hit 30 home runs,
and he's a good person.
And he's a good person, of course. Like that is a losing player, in my opinion. And I shouldn't have to argue that when he's won nothing. No All-Stars, no Silver Sluggers, no Gold Gloves.
Well, he was in the Derby that one year.
He was in the Derby. You know what, Kevin? He lost the Derby. He lost the Derby. Never been to the playoffs, never won a playoff game. Like nothing. There's nothing there. So I shouldn't like the fact that we're still having this conversation in 2022 in his contract year.
He's 29 years old.
He's 29 years old. Yeah. This is his athletic peak. This is his prime. You know what Bryce Harper was doing at 29? Winning the goddamn MVP.
I don't even know if he is 29 yet.
He might be a little bit younger. Whatever. Winning the MVP. You know what Castellanos was doing? Winning a Silver Slugger. Kyle Schwarber, he was getting traded to Boston and being their goddamn leadoff hitter as they almost made the World Series. Stop the nonsense. Stop.
Yeah. And you know what sucks too is his value's plummeted, man. So it's like, what could they even get for him?
Nothing. I mean, there's no market for a player like that. Like he might go on a hot streak and you can bully a team. Like maybe Seattle's like, oh, like we're trying to make a playoff push and you get a couple prospects.
Just leave him there when we're out there this week.
Yeah, just leave him there. Like, but you're right. I think that the time to make a move was probably this past offseason, and they held on to him, which I understood why. Like, there's that potential, that ceiling we're always talking about, but it hasn't worked.
Yeah. You summed it up. I mean, and like you said, and like the point we just made, like about Bryce Harper, like, for the people who were saying, well, Mike Trout's not a winner either. Again, there's a reason why we're not being critical of a Mike Trout or a Bryce Harper. What they're doing on the baseball field clearly is a winning style of baseball. And yes, roster construction plays a part in it, David. But the difference between Mike Trout and Bryce Harper compared to a Rhys Hoskins, who, let's be real, is a dime a dozen. It's really not even a conversation. It's really not. And like, that's not me trying to be rude on Twitter, trying to dismiss somebody's point. But it's such a non-starter of a conversation that it's not worth the energy from me to even discuss it with you, because from where it is from the jump, if that's what you're going to bring to me, it just shows me that I'm going to be talking to a wall. There's no reason to even debate it with you. So, but yeah, I think we hit the nail on the head there, man. I mean, the Rhys Hoskins love and the defense of, it's not even just Rhys, David. It's every guy who's been a major part of this organization the last 5, 6, 7 years. the people that just to continue to want to defend these guys. It's the syndrome of when an Eagles take a guy in the 6th or 7th round and they're like, steal, absolute steal. This guy's going to be awesome. It's just Philly fans just overdoing the narrative of their own guys. Like, it's just kind of like, take a step back and like take an unbiased view of what you're watching. Is this really what you deem to be like worth your energy of defending and fighting for? Because they're not fighting for you. It's clear. They've not been a good baseball team. So, what else can you really say? If they were playing with some energy, David, and some life, then maybe, all right, I could get behind that, but there's just nothing.
It truly is just bland and boring and a whole lot of nothing. Kind of a point I made off the air, and then we'll jump into the next topic here. We've talked about Rhys enough here, but I kind of compared it to the hardcore Ben Simmons defenders, the hardcore Carson Wentz defenders who hands up. I used to love me some Carson Wentz, but even those made more sense than some of the people who defend the Phillies because those players had won stuff. Carson Wentz almost won MVP. He was a couple games away from securing that. Ben Simmons, 2-time All-Star, All NBA third team, almost a Defensive Player of the Year. Like he had some accolades. There were accolades. Wentz was a Pro Bowler. There were accolades. You look at a guy like Rhys, a guy like Gene, a guy like Didi. Some of these other guys. There's no accolades. There's nothing. Maybe All-Star from 2014. It wasn't even a Philly. Gene hasn't won nothing as a member of the Phillies. Rhys has won nothing. Like we're wasting our time defending guys who have never won in their careers. There's nothing to hold on to. There's just nothing. So I don't understand it. I love the idea of homegrown guys. Guys who we want to be good, they're likable, good guy, whatever. But like at the end of the day, like we're wasting our time sticking up for guys who you put it the best who aren't sticking up for us. They're not giving us their best on the field. Either they're not good enough or they're not trying hard enough or it's a combination of the both. But we are genuinely wasting our time having the same conversation every single season.
Yeah, and I mean, as you know, if you're following along on YouTube, the standings are rolling across the bottom right now. The Phillies are 7 games out, David. You can preach it's early. I do it every year. 7 games out is a significant hole to dig out of at any point in the season. So, if there's a time for urgency, it's right now. We've got to get going. I don't even think you can even look at the Mets like you said right now. The Phillies, there is enough time in the season where you got to focus on yourself. It's only May. Stop worrying about what other teams are doing and worry about what you do. If the Phillies just continue to take care of their business, they'll be fine. But here's the thing, they need to start taking care of their business. So, now they're heading out west, David, looking for answers. They're going into Seattle. Then they go to Los Angeles. 7-game trip, David. This could bury their season early. This is an incredibly important road trip. Incredibly important. So we'll see. We'll see what team goes up.
I mean, it's not exactly the best time for a road trip to happen.
To go out west too, like that's not easy. It's not easy.
And we know what LA is. I believe they have the best starting rotation ERA in baseball. They're good. They're really good. We got to go play Freddie Freeman again. Seattle, they're not the best right now. They're kind of starting a little slow themselves.
They play well at home though.
They do play well at home, and they got some guys. They also have a pretty good rotation. Their offense hasn't performed up to expectations. They kind of missed on their big offseason goal of getting a Chris Bryant type character, but it's still a good ball club who's playing better than the Phils, but they got some young guys really contributing. So it's certainly no easy task. You're going out 7 games. At minimum, you gotta pull away with 4. No clue how they're going to do that.
Seattle's 2-8 in their last 10. So
like I said, they're not playing the best baseball right now, but they are at home.
Got to jump on
them. Especially
you can
with
win
LA.
the night to get the trip started.
Yeah, but it's certainly litmus test here where if you keep slipping, like it's early, but it's also getting late real fast.
Yeah,
7 games out of first place, you're closer to the Nationals than you are the Mets. Definitely not a great spot to be in this.
You were 2 times as close to the Nationals as you are the Mets.
Yeah, I
If
mean,
you doubled what you are up on the Nationals, you'd still be a game behind the Mets.
they're a fourth place team, and I think the idea of just waiting for this Mets collapse to happen, it might not happen this year. Like they got some new faces in there
It might
who
though.
it might. You never know with the Mets, but with
Doesn't mean
Scherzer, DeGrom's going to come back eventually. Marte's been good. Conha's been good. Escobar's been pretty solid. Like they do have some faces in there who are producing. Buck's looking like he's making a good impact as their new manager.
I mean, here's the thing. Even if they do collapse, David, I think it's safe to say right now it wouldn't be the Phillies that would catch them.
Yeah. The Phillies got to win the games, man. Like they have to win the games. The Braves are looking a lot better. The Marlins are looking a lot better. The Phillies got to win the games to get themselves back in the conversation. We can't just keep waiting on other teams to collapse.
Need Mick, man.
Yeah, we do. We need
Where's
to
Mick
save
at?
our season. Save our season.
Need him. But that's honestly, David. We wanted to get into more, but we kind of covered all of it. That's kind of all I have for you. Here today. More doom and gloomy than we would want it to be, but it's just the reality of the situation right now for this Phillies baseball team, and we'll see what they can do out west. We do have coming off that big Sixers win last night, so at least we have some good vibes in the city.
Yeah, Sixers looking good. Eagles had a fun little
Yeah.
draft, fun little off season. So there's something to be
I'm
optimistic
feeling the
about.
Sixers, man. I'm feeling it.
Yeah, Kevin's very bullish on James Harden. He thinks he's leading us to the promised land. So we'll see.
Well, he was due for last night.
Yeah, very good last night.
Yeah.
Super fun game to watch. I was yelling in my apartment, so a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that said, hopefully some of those good vibes from the Farg can translate over to our Phillies out
I would
west.
like to, have a good positive episode, be excited about the Phils.
Yeah, hasn't happened yet.
I hate getting on here and being like this. This is not me, man. I feel like I'm a different person doing this.
Yeah, I mean that's where you should be really concerned when Kevin's not fighting for the Phils. Like we got problems because I'm normally pretty quick to jump off
Yeah.
the bandwagon, but Kevin normally he clings
mean,
on. So we got issues.
Yeah, it's it is what it is.
It is.
You gotta keep it real,
Gotta
like I
keep
said,
it
it
real.
is early, but like they haven't shown me anything that would signify they're gonna make a move or make a move in the sense of like climb the standings.
Yeah.
We'll see,
I mean, 30 games. That's a good little sample size right there.
Yeah.
Plenty of games to show us who they are. They haven't showed us anything good quite yet. But again, yeah, hopefully West Coast trip goes our way. With that said, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. We are on YouTube. Again, we're continuing to try to pump out more content, grow the YouTube. So definitely go check that out. Facebook, Twitter, social media links. Every single link is going to be down in the description below. Again, thanks everyone for the support. We appreciate continuing to see our numbers climb. But yeah, check out all those links. Subscribe where you want to subscribe. Follow us on the social medias. And we will talk to y'all hopefully after an encouraging West Coast trip. But no promises. With that said, we're the Bullpen Blues Podcast. We'll talk to y'all in a couple of days.
Go Phils.